Thank you everyone for tuning in. My name is Andy. I'm your host today. Thank you for coming into the 2022 RMO SMR Centralised Recruitment Process Information Evening. This is Sarah, my co-host. Just before I start, I just want to run through some very quick virtual etiquettes before we kick on. Could you please ensure that your microphone is kept on mute at all times? If you're not muted, we can mute you, and just for etiquette, because we are actually getting quite a few participants. We're currently looking at 70, and we're actually expecting over 100, 150. So it would be great if you can keep your microphone muted. And please, if you've got any questions you'd like to ask, put in the chat box. But if you can actually address it, you can select who you want to address the chat to. If you can address it to Sarah Davies, my co-host, who will be monitoring the chat. So if you'd like to send her a hello message now to test it out, that would be great. So you can actually change it in the chat box at the bottom. As you probably have noticed, this session will be recorded as well. So we'll put it on the PMCWA website. If you want to review any content that we discussed, you can go on there. Hopefully in the next couple of days, that will be posted up there. Hopefully my voice is not too annoying for everyone to go through it again. And this is obviously for anyone who couldn't actually participate today, they can actually get a chance to look at it. And we've also got a few representatives who will be who are here today from our office, as well as who will be speaking to you today. We've got Dr. Margaret Sturdy with us. She's the medical advisor and clinical lead for the centralised recruitment process from the Office of the Chief Medical Officer. We've also got Dr. Dean Chung from the Postgraduate Medical Council of WA. He's also the JMO Forum Co-Chair, who has kindly agreed to walk you through all the important bits and pieces and documents, such as cover letters, CV, and selection criteria. Really, that's what's going to make your application stands out. We've also got Victoria Sedetico, Nicole Barbarich, and Natasha Diana from the WA Country House Service Postgraduate Medical Education team, who also actually present and discuss real pathways and rotations a little bit later on. So yes, we're going to get started. So please don't forget to put in any chats and any questions in the chat to Sarah. So this is just a very quick overview of what we're going to go through today. We're just going to quickly go through some important dates and websites, and I will be going through the actual process of the centralised recruitment process, different applicant types, and some tips on how you would apply through MedJobs WA, the online portal. And then Dean will run through cover letter, CV, selection criteria, and then we'll hand over to the WACS team to go through a few things, and then we'll close it off, and then we'll try and answer as many questions as we can in an hour slot. But first of all, I'm going to hand over to Sarah, who's going to take you through some of the things.
Great, thank you, Andy. So we'll start off with the important dates for the centralised recruitment process for the RMOs and the SMRs. Applications are already open, so they opened last week on Monday, the 24th of May, and they'll be closing 4 p.m. Tuesday, the 22nd of June. That's Australian Western Standard Times for Perth. A reminder that your referees may be asked after that date, that closing date, to provide a reference. It's a bit earlier than some other job applications, so they may be contacted after that date. Assessment and selection will be assessed, applicants will be assessed for eligibility and assessed for suitability by their first preference site, and that happens from Wednesday the 23rd of June. The first round offer period will start from Monday the 23rd of August, and finally the close of the suitable pool and the end of any offers is happening on Friday the 15th of October. So from that point then no further offers can be made from the pool. Just a couple of important websites that are really crucial for this recruitment process. With the centralised recruitment now being open, you can apply through MedJobs WA, and the job is also advertised on Jobs WA. So the websites are just there. Another really handy website or guide is the application guide, which is found on the MedJobs advertisement. This guide contains a lot of information and a lot of questions and answers a lot of questions about the application process. And it's a really useful document to refer to before you apply, but also during the process as it goes on. So we really recommend you save a copy of that so that you can easily refer to it once the ad is closed. You can still access the closed advertisement on MedJobs WA, and it is still available after closing, but you'll need to hunt for it a bit more on the MedJobs website. So we find it's just easier to save a copy of the guide so you've got it on hand. And then I will now hand back to Andy to talk you through the application process for the RMOs and the SMRs.
Thank you, Sarah. So as you probably can see on the screen, we just tried to, the process can be perhaps complicated to understand, although we try to simplify it as much as we can. So really, through the centralized recruitment process, applicants submit one application and for 3 preferences, and that actually is for 3 positions as well as 3 site preferences. So you can preference whether you want to do RMO at Charlie's or SMR at Fiona Stanley Hospital, or again RMO at WAC. So you get a choice of you get a choice of 3 site preferences that you would like to do, that you would like to work at. And what happens after the application period closes is that your application will firstly be screened for eligibility against a set of eligibility criteria. And then once that's gone through, your application will be forwarded to your first preference employer. So for example, if you have preference that you would like to be an RMO at Royal Perth, then as your first preference, then your application will go to Royal Perth as your first preferred employing site. And then the medical panel, the assessment panel at Royal Perth or at each first preference employers will assess your application and rank applicants. And then after that, we go into the first round offer, which means that your first preference employer will make offers to those suitable applicants. Now, I just want to, my apologies, I want to take a step back. When the first preference employer is assessing for suitability, they will assess each applicant against the selection criteria. And if you've been deemed suitable for at least a RMO position, you'll go into the suitable pool. And then during the first round offer, the first preference employers will make offers to suitable applicants who have preference them first during the first round offer. And if you didn't get an offer during the first round offer, you then go into the second round offer, and the second preference employers can make offer to applicants in a suitable pool. And after that, we go into the general suitable pool, and that's when every employers can make offers to available candidates, applicants in the suitable pool. And after the process closed on the 15th of October, no more offers can be made. Sorry. So MedJobs WA is vitally important. I know Sarah mentioned that the jobs is also advertised on Jobs WA, but when you actually click on apply, or actually has the MedJobs WA website, MedJobs WA is actually where you would actually complete and submit your application. And once you log into MedJobs, you will actually just complete all the tabs that's required there, and that's it. And there'll be some mandatory fields that you will have to complete. And once you've completed all the fields, and you submit the application. I thought I was missing one part. it's very important that if actually for you to have access to your email address that's in your MedJobs. If you have previously used MedJobs to apply for any position, you would have created a profile. It's actually very important for you to continue to use that profile and actually to go and check that the email address you had put down for that profile that you can continue to access. For example, if you had used a uni.edu address, sometimes you can't actually access that anymore. So it's very important that you actually go back and update your email address. So because all the communication from MedJobs, including offers and suitability, will be coming to your emails. So you need to be able to have access to your email, to your current email address. Please do not create a new profile if you already had a profile before. We'll explain why in a little bit, but it's very important that if you already have a profile, update that one instead of create a new one. So basically, you would just go through all the tabs, and they're usually fairly explanatory. Preferences is where you would actually preference your 3 hospital sites. You can also request split contracts between 2 sites. And also if you preference RMO with WACS, you will also be asked to rank several WACS sites as part of the application process. And you will also be asked to enter employment details, such as where you completed your internship, your current employment, exam qualifications, or trainee programs, and if you have any breaks in service. Now, in the supporting documents section, I'm not sure if you can actually see my pointer here. Yes, you can. In the supporting documents section is where you will upload your the response to the selection criteria, your CV, and your cover letter. And also, if you're actually applying for WACS for an SMR position, you will also need to complete a WACS SMR site preference selection form and upload in this section. Now, all of these documents are part of the attachments in the MedJobs WA advert that when you log in, when you go onto the advert, you see them. And the final part of the application involves listing 2 referees, as well as your training intentions in terms of your future, your career pathways. Now, I just want to go through different types of applicants who might be applying in this RMO SMR centralized recruitment process. One type of applicant are those RMO or intern. So if you're currently intern or first year RMO, so you'll be either on a 2 or 3 year contract, and you wish to stay with your current employer, you need to apply for that. Or if you're a current intern or a first year RMO on a 2 and 3 year contract, you want to go to a different employer, you also need to go through this application process. We'll go into a little more details in a little bit. Or if you're new applicants who currently don't hold either a 2 or 3 year contract with any of the participating health services. So what we call option 1s are those applicants who are on a 2 or 3 year contract. So again, who are current interns as well as first year RMOs, and you wish to remain with your current employer. So really what you need to do is log in. So log into MedJobs WA, confirm your contact details, and click apply now. Now this is where it's important. So please, if you are option 1 and you want to stay with your current employer, please do not start a new profile. Please use your existing MedJobs WA profile, because if you start a new one, MedJobs WA won't recognize you as an option 1 applicant, and you will actually need to start a new application. So if you are on a 2 or 3 year contract and you want to stay with your current employer, please use your existing MedJobs WA profile, update your email address, and go through the process. So once you click apply now, you will be offered two options. Please select the option which indicates that you want to remain at your current health site, and click submit. Now the thing about this option, applicants in this option, is you don't need to supply CV, referees, or selection criteria. You basically will just get a confirmation of your continuation with your existing employer. Yeah, so there's another big tip. Please update your contact detail and do not make a new profile. Now, if you're a current intern or RMO on a 2 or 3 year contract and you want to go to a different employer, you certainly can do that. You would go into MedJobs WA, confirm your contact details, click apply now. Again, 2 options will come up. You'll select this option 2, which indicates that you wish to apply for a different, to go to a different employer, and you will actually need to complete a full application and attach CVs and selection criteria and cover letter. What would happen is you will be assessed by your first preference site, and if you're not successful in your first preference site, you would actually retain your position with your current employer. I hope that makes sense. Options 3 is basically new applicants. So if you don't currently hold a 2 or 3 year contract with any of the participating health services, you'll be considered as new applicants. So you will go into MedJobs. I would imagine that you probably have to create a new profile because you probably have not applied for any positions through MedJobs before, and then you'll be directed to complete a new application on MedJobs. And yeah, so some quick tips on the actual application process. Again, I know we're talking about this for quite a few times now, but please do not create a new MedJobs profile if you already had one before. Please just update your email address, particularly if you use the university email address. If you've had problem, in fact, we recommend you don't use Internet Explorer. Please use either Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge to access MedJobs WA. Please prepare your documents and start your application early. Late applications will not be accepted. Our experience is that most of the applications come in the last 2 or 3 days, which probably place undue stress on yourself. I understand everyone is busy, but if you can, please start on your application early, and you can submit your application, and you can also, once you've submitted, you can actually go back and make tweaks and then resubmit, re-upload CVs or selection criteria. So please start your application early so you don't have a rush right at the end. Now I'm going to hand over to Dean. I'm hoping Dean is online and that he can hear us to run through really the most important part of the tonight's presentation.
Great. Thanks so much, Andy and Sarah. Hope you guys can hear me okay. And big thank you as well to our medical workforce for having me join tonight and speak at this Service MedReg and RMO information evening. So for those who joined halfway, my name is Dean. I'm the co-chair of the PMCWA Junior Medical Officer Forum. And I'm also a basic physician trainee at Fiona Stanley Hospital. And I just thought I'd offer my 2 cents on the application process tonight, which is, done very recently last year. So hopefully you'll have some good tips to take away. So I thought we'd just start off on the cover letter, which is usually the first part of your application. And some of the kind of key takeaways I wanted to make is your cover letter is your chance to really show that who you are as a person, why you're interested in the role. It's almost like when you sign up for something on the internet and it says, please confirm you're not a robot, and you have to click a bunch of signposts. This cover letter is the equivalent of that one. You've already made it through the process of eligibility, your application's been forwarded. So this is really the first impression that people get. So with the cover letter, key things, keeping it nice and brief, probably a maximum of 2 pages. And like we said, it's your first introduction. And what you want to do here is essentially capture some of the information that might not come across in your CV. So your reasons or motivation for applying for that particular role at that particular hospital, as well as the opportunity to include some of the other reasons that you're interested, such as, you know, particular employment requests if you're looking at a part-time option or if you're moving from interstate. So maybe just onto the next slide, Andy. Thanks so much. So where do you start? That's a good question. So I haven't had too much experience with writing letters outside of the medical application process. So it's a good kind of refresher, and hopefully this is handy. First off, I like to start with a really clear introduction. So who you are, what position you're working at currently. And also, like I was saying, you know, it's a chance to show you're not a robot, show that you really, you know, I'm excited to apply for this role. I'm enthusiastic to come to this hospital, because as an employer going through hundreds and hundreds of applications, if you kind of just launch in straight into very kind of logistic detail, it misses that opportunity to introduce yourself and showcase yourself. So showing excitement and passion is really important. And I think for a letter, you know, if someone sees a big block of text coming out for 2 pages, it can be sometimes quite overwhelming. So what I like to do is very quickly to put some kind of signposting statement. So in maybe 1 or 2 sentences describing the key reasons why or what you can bring to that role. What are your key strengths? What are your key motivators for this role? And then basically through the rest of the letter, you can expand on some of those reasons. Now, when you're coming to the bulk of the letter, that's it can seem quite daunting, but I've found through my applications some really handy frameworks that I've used, and we'll come to this you know, numerous times throughout the talk, but the CAMP framework is a really good way. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of that before. It's a very good structure that you can even use in interviews. Probably we'll discuss it in another talk, but a really good framework for discussing things such as your motivation to want to do something, or even providing kind of a snapshot of you know, your key strengths. So the C in CAMP stands for clinical, the A stands for academic, M stands for management or leadership, and P stands for personal. So I'll run through that in my particular application as my particular cover letter in the next slide. Another alternative you can do, particularly if it's an example like a training post, maybe less so for the service med reg and RMO, but it can be nice, for example, to show how you've developed that interest to apply for that particular job. For example, you may say, you know, I started as an intern in this area, and, you know, I really enjoyed my time there. Now I've gone on to develop further skills through placements or research, and now I'm coming to apply for this registrar position, for example. So we'll go into the example in the next slide in a second. Sorry, Andy. I just wanted to say, with the end of the letter, it's nice to wrap it up, and, you know, a nice statement you can always put is, thank you for your consideration of my application, or to even just signpost what you've mentioned in the letter. So, you know, through this application, I hope that you can see I've demonstrated A, B, C, D. Thank you for your kind consideration, or I look forward to hearing from you soon. It's just a nice personal touch, again, to not be a robot, not just dump all your reasons and then hope they like it. And signing off, you know, even yours sincerely. It's probably one of the times that you want to use yours sincerely or yours faithfully or truthfully, you know, to make sure you're not faking anything. But, you know, it kind of goes a long way, I think, rather than just the regards or cheers. Definitely, I would steer clear of the cheers for this one. Thanks, Andy. I'll go to the next slide. So I've just put the very kind of top of my cover letter. I did this for example, a service med registrar application. And you can see some things here, you know, it's set out in a nice font. You don't have, you know, size 20 font at the top and then it's size 10 at the bottom. It's consistent. And even using things such as your, you know, justifying your text for the formatting gives it a really professional look, I think. As with the letter, you know, you want to address it properly. So that could be, for example, recruitment team for that particular hospital, or, you know, to whom it may concern. We've got a date here. And I'll just go through this one and point out what I've tried to do here. So first up, I've got my introduction here. So it's with great enthusiasm that I apply for a service medical reg position. So you're really showing that, okay, I'm keen for this. It's not just like a robot auto submitted this letter. So introduce myself. I'm a second-year basic physician trainee at Fiona Stanley Hospital, and I strongly believe that becoming a medical registrar is the next step in my career development. So very early on, you've got your motivation for the position, you've got who you are, and the next part of that first paragraph is basically going through a camp structure that I talked about: the clinical, academic, management, and personal. So here I've tried to summarize it in one sentence, and it's basically to signpost the rest of my letter. So I'm confident that I can bring to my role my strong work ethic and clinical competency, that's my C, my commitment to research and professional development, which is my academic side. And I've kind of combined my management / leadership and personal reasons as well into this. So I said, I aspire to be a leader in the profession in the future. So for a potential employer reading this, within that first two sentences, you have a vague idea of what the candidate's like. And I think that's really what you want to try and achieve. So I hope that's a bit helpful. Just on to the next slide. Thanks, Andy. Okay, so we've gone through the letter, you take the night off, you enjoy, you're like, oh, I've got to tackle this CV beast next. Now, CVs can be quite daunting, because I know for a lot of people who are tuning into this, you've may have done a lot of things since your time in medical school. Some people work careers before, done lots of things and had amazing achievements there. So it can be sometimes hard to think, how do I condense all of that information in a way that's still getting the main points across, but not having things drowned out? So what we said here, it should kind of be a 3 to 4 page maximum. I think you really want to highlight your best bits here. And sometimes, if you're sending a 20-page CV, it's just overwhelming. It can be hard to highlight what you want. So I'd say what you do before starting is think about key achievements that you had, things that you're really proud of, things that you want an employer to know straight away. And you almost put them into your CV as the first things, and you can build around that later. Use of headings is really important. So again, not a big list of text, but thinking about what are the key headings. And I found what was really helpful in my applications is to read my selection criteria or the JDF and seeing what kind of things, for example, a college or the employer is looking for. So, let's say the key scoring domains for a particular post were, clinical experience, research, presentations, community service. It makes sense that you would structure your CV in a very similar way. And I've definitely done this in the past where, say you apply for multiple roles, even tailoring your CV to fit different aspects. But I think a number of, no matter kind of what you're applying for, a number of key things to include. So your personal details right at the top, put your qualifications or education history. Work history is really good. And I think particularly in the medical context, it looks nice and neat to sort this by your postgraduate year. So you're having a reverse chronological order. So you can put your most recent job, what you've done in residency, what you've done in internship. And, as I know, a lot of people come from other backgrounds. So even to have a section saying your non-medical employment is nice to summarize there. Now, different parts, like I said, depending on what's important for that particular application, you may want to put research higher if it's a key area for you. If you want to put your academic awards as a key area. And I think what you want to do is essentially grab the employer's attention straight away. So putting your really good things towards the top of your CV rather than having on page, 7 at the back when they're just lost interest and checked out. Very simple tips. I'm sure this is very basic information, but make it look professional, clear headings, good formatting, typos. You don't want to spell your name wrong in the first sentence because it's just like, and I thought this was a really good tip, having a friend or family member to read over your CV at the end. So, it can be really, we can get very tunnel vision when preparing applications and, we just want to list everything. You've got it jam packed. But it's really good to get someone who's kind of outside of that and can have a look at your CV and say, hey, that is right. You did put your achievement quite early on, or, this was something that you were really proud of, you've really highlighted it here. And so get someone to have a look over it, make sure, again, you've not missed anything. They may say, oh, you did that thing and you've totally forgotten about it. So so I've got on the next page, just kind of the heading of my CV. Ooh, I didn't put it in. Okay, no, okay, great. I'll just jump one back, Andy, in case I forgot something. Okay, great, we've mentioned that. So selecting according to what position you're applying for, you can tailor it for different positions, and using consistent formatting. I've got this bit down here, use spacing and bolding to draw emphasis. Now, this is something that you may or may not want to do or agree with, but I find that having kind of, your key achievements, for example, if it was academic awards and you had, for example, 5 of them during your uni and your studies or your working career, it can be nice to have them spaced maybe a line apart so it draws attention to each of them, as opposed to having a block of text where it's kind of lumped in with the other, let's say you've been to 100 professional development courses and it's just lumped in there. It can be really easy to lose that. So use of headings and subheadings is great. Thanks, Andy. Next slide, I've just kind of got a brief example of that spacing and bolding, and so I've spelt my name right, which is good. Key details, address, date of birth, phone, email. So for me, a key one that comes up a lot is your education, what's your background. So here I've kind of used a consistent formatting where, I've used bold, so someone was scanning this here, quickly see, all right, he's basic physician training, he's done an MD, he's done, embarrassing, he's partially completed the Master of Public Health. Yeah, I mean, look, putting that stuff there, people say, oh, I did a little bit of this, but didn't finish it. I think, it all adds experience if you can justify it with, academic transcripts. And then from there you can go into the finer details, what it was your GPA, maybe some of the extra electives you did. Okay, so I hope that kind of makes sense. Just having a nice clear and using the spacing here. I think if I had that all jammed together, it might be a bit heavy on the eyes. Okay, great. Now, the third beast to tackle. You've knocked out your letter, knocked out your CV, and you're like, oh, selection criteria. It's like writing an essay. But don't fear. So I think, again, selection criteria, it's all stuff that, I really encourage people, before you go into writing one, it's good to just kind of sit with the criteria for a day or two. And I do this for most of my applications, where I'll look at the criteria and just straight away put in dot points, what I think immediately comes to my mind. So for example, it's a very common criteria is shown how you've got excellent interpersonal communication skills. And straight away, you might think of this, particular patient that you had, or a challenging scenario that really, you were proud of, you had good communication in. Or I may say, what's your experience in kind of education and teaching? And straight away you can say, oh yeah, I've done this position, I've lectured here, or I've done this presentation. So having that criteria just out in front of you, stare at it for a day, and being able to make those dot points. And then what I kind of do is I go back in, find a way to synthesize those examples and get my key points across, and again, keeping it within the word limit. Now in this tip, it's pretty funny. It says, do not sign the JDF and submit it. Like, you'd be surprised, but it happens. People just print out the document and sign it. So please don't do that. If you want to show that you want to put your best foot forward, and yeah, I think quite self-explanatory. Now, some of the subtle tips, I mean, I'll leave it up to you guys in terms of what you put in your criteria, or have different background and experience. But I think what you can always do, no matter how much you've done or how little you've done, is to really make your examples stand out. And you can do that through using very active language. And what I mean by active language is, having some pride in the work you've done. And even, I think there can be a tendency to be like, oh, not really, kind of claim this one, or we have a lot of imposter syndrome in medicine. But to say, I played a key role in, ABC, for example, rather than saying, oh, I was part of a team and there was a good outcome that came from it. It doesn't really show that ownership. And as an employer, you don't want to say, I'm not employing that team to come to hospital, I'm employing one person. So, say, I played a key role in this, even if, you look back and you say, oh, other people were key members. But, if you did play a key role, claim it and don't be afraid to. Another example might be saying, oh, I communicated with the patient and this led to a good outcome. While that answer is a bit better in terms of you saying that I communicated, it it kind of shows that, oh, maybe this just happened by chance. So you really want to expand on things, saying, you know, I communicated in the patient with this particular strategy or in this particular way in order to get X response. The result was this. And I think a really good way you can put those examples is using the STAR or SAL models. Haven't heard of SAL before, but it's really good. I had to read through. So STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. So let's think of an example, one that might come up. When have you dealt with conflict at work, for example? You could say, I was working this particular role, a conflict situation arose because of this. And then you can expand maybe in one sentence. It was difficult because there were, you know, competing concerns A, B, C. What I did in this example is 1, 2, 2. I did this with the intention of achieving this result. And then you can put the result, you know, we all became friends. It was great after the team was strengthened. And result is a really good time for you to put in objective feedback. You know, it's really easy for people to say, oh yeah, I'm a great communicator, I'm a great team player. Like anyone can say that. But to really back it up and say, I received feedback from senior colleagues, or I received feedback in my term report that showed, you know, where seniors commented that I was a key team player, or that through my actions, I was able to effectively resolve this conflict. And yeah, it's just one thing to think of, you know, when you're making points, it's not about quantity, like it's really not about quantity. If you can make 1 or 2 solid examples per selection criteria and really show that full, you know, STAR or SAO, I think that's very powerful. Okay, some other things here, we've just got to make sure you answer the question. That's a big one. And I think employers like to see that you get into the question quite quickly. So it'd say, you know, criteria is, when have you shown good communication? And then you get an essay on communication is really important because it helps to, you know, bridge gaps between this and, you know, there's different models of communication. And while that's a good, like, nice to know, it's not answering when did you show good communication. So, you know, it's okay to maybe have one sentence start saying, you know, I realize that communication is really important because it does this. And I believe that I've shown that in this scenario. Okay, so I think that's it for that slide. I might be done even, Andy. Okay, great. Beat myself to it. So avoiding those textbooks introductions, getting into your answer quickly and succinct, like that's key. If you can reread over your criteria and you can say the same thing in 2 sentences versus 2 paragraphs, you know, the people reading these aren't robots either. You know, they're going to probably, you know, go through it. It's quite a painstaking process, but they want to do it to identify the best candidates. And if you can give them the info they want very quickly, rather than having to search for it with a magnifying glass or fine-tooth comb, that really is a win-win scenario. So look, you guys will be great. If you have any questions, please, you know, contact the medical workforce team and they can pass them through to me. But all the best with your applications. And as Andy said, get onto them early. Cool. Thanks very much.
Great, thank you, Dean. Actually, we have a very direct question to Dr. Chung. We've got a potential applicant just wondering if there is a particular font size that you would recommend for the cover letter.
Yeah. I think most common ones I use at 11 or 12, depending on what font you're picking. And I would say just stick with the standard ones. If you're a Microsoft user, you know, Arial or Times New Roman's really good. You know, Calibri is not bad. I'd probably give it like a 7.5. If you're a MacBook user, some of my favorites are like Helvetica New. This particular one I use is called Optima on MacBook. Anything with, you know, you don't want big curly calligraphy letters, something that's just easy to see. So 11 or 12 is really good. What I do as well, if you notice here, the spacing even. So someone's just putting even a 1.15 or 1.5 spacing can be a lot easier on the eye. And final formatting tip would be using the justify alignment. So you kind of got all the edges lined up. It looks good, putting paragraph spacing.
Thanks, Dean. I think just just going back to what Dean was saying is that I think writing cover letter, your CV and selection criteria response does take time. So I think that then goes back to our point or tips, I guess, is try to start your application process or at least prepare your documents earlier so you get a chance to think about what you want to put in there. So there's not a big rush at the end. Just a very quick couple of points on referees. So as part of the application process, you'll be asked to provide 2 referees. I think at least one of them should be a recent previous clinical supervisor within the last 12 months. Please ask for their approval before you're listing them as a referee. And please make sure you've got their correct email address provided in the MedJobs software, because that we usually get lots of issues around incorrect spelling of email address, which can actually delay the referees getting referral reports and getting the referral reports back to us. And the referees can be contacted at any time after the application closes. Now I'm going to, just a quick tip, a few tips. You can check the status of your referee reports on MedJobs. Once you, again, these are all actually tips are in application guide. Click on your application once you're logged in, open the referee section, and you can look at whether your referee report has been sent, where it's been actually your referee have actually submitted a report. I'm going to, again, please check your referee contact details. I'm going to hand over to, I think, Victoria from WACS to run through the rural pathways with the WA Country Health Services.
Thanks, Andy. Hi, everyone. My name is Victoria. I'm a Medical Education Officer at WACS. Today, I'm here to provide a bit of information on the 2022 Resident and Service Medical Registrar positions and rotations that are available at WACS. And thanks to Andy and Sarah for letting us share. I'm going to briefly cover the sites that you can apply to for these positions, how you can complete a WACS rotation and from which metropolitan sites, and some of the pathways and programs that are available through WACS. So you can move on to the next slide now. So through the centralised recruitment, you can apply for resident positions at Albany, Broome, Bunbury, Geraldton and Kalgoorlie. And there are service medical registrar positions available at Albany, Bunbury and Geraldton. There are also multiple RMO rotations available from participating Metro Health Services. The majority of these are through Royal Perth, Charlie's and Joondalup Health Campus. And if you'd just like to move on to the next slide, thank you. So on this slide, you can see a breakdown of the available rural rotations for RMOs. So you can see that the locations vary depending on your primary employing health service. So for example, if you're really eager to complete a rotation in the Pilbara, Charlie's are the hospital that rotate to this region. If you'd just like to change, thank you. So if you're applying for a WACS RMO or Service Medical Registrar position, you'll be able to submit your employment preferences, as Sarah and Andy mentioned. So this includes like your contract length, preferred start date, and for the WACS positions, you'll be able to rank your preferred WACS locations. So you'll need to rank a minimum of 2 sites for this. And as Dean mentioned, submitting a cover letter is really important, especially for us. You can include any supporting or general information that you'd like us to consider as part of your application. For example, if you and your partner are applying to the same WACS sites, if you just mention that you and your partner would both like to be located at the same site, we can try and make sure that happens for you. As well as if you are only really interested in one WACS site, and obviously you have to preference 2 sites in the process, just let us know in the in your cover letter that you are really keen to be located at Albany, and if you can't get a position there, you would like your application to be given to Royal Perth as your second preference. And also to make your application competitive, just make sure you express why you're interested in a rural position. You can let us know of any links to the country that you may have. And if you find that you have limited rural experience, just let us know why you're now exploring a rural career and why you want that experience. Yep, that next slide, please. Thank you. If you're planning to be employed at a metro site but are eager to complete one or more rural rotations with WACS, you can do these through Royal Perth, Charlie's and Joondalup Health Campus for the majority of sites. And once you're successful in gaining a contract with your chosen metro health service, you'll then be asked to rank your term allocations with that health service. And this will be your opportunity to request which and how many WACS terms you'd like to undertake. Another option for rural rotations is through the Community Residency Program, and this is separate to the rotations I mentioned on the previous slide. The difference is that these rotations have a focus on community medicine. So 20% of your clinical time will actually be in a community setting, for example, outpatient clinics, Aboriginal medical services or private GPs. There are some eligibility requirements with this program. So RMOs must hold a contract with Fiona Stanley, Charlie's or Royal Perth to be eligible to complete a rotation. And at the time of placement, the RMO must hold general registration with the MBA and be an Australian citizen or permanent resident. It's also worth mentioning that the locations you see aren't quarantined to any particular location, so they're not quarantined to Fish, Charlie's or Royal Perth. You're able to preference any of those sites. And so on the next slide, it'll just say how you can apply for the CRP program. So it's advertised in MedJobs, but it is separate to the centralised recruitment process. So you'll still need to apply for your RMO position through the centralised process and then search for the Rural Community Residency Program in MedJobs to apply for this program. You'll be required to submit a statement of interest and submit your CV, and you'll be able to preference which term you would like to complete as well as the location. Things to note, if you're unsure which metro hospital you're going to be employed at next year, but you think you'd be interested in this program, it's still worth applying. If you find you're not at one of the eligible health sites, you can always withdraw your application or decline an offer. You are also able to complete one of the standard rural rotations I mentioned before, so it's not a case of one or the other, you're able to complete both. And don't be deterred if you're waitlisted. There tends to be a lot of movement throughout the year as people might move into registrar positions or their circumstances change. So it doesn't mean you won't get an offer later on in the year, perhaps. And travel and accommodation are provided on this program. And if you'd like to, thank you. I'm just going to briefly cover some of the other programs and pathways that we have at WACS. So if you go into the next slide, we've got the workplace-based assessment program. So the WBA program is an alternative to completing the clinical exam component of the AMC standard assessment pathway. WACS WBA candidates undertake the program across 12 months and if successfully completing the program are eligible for the AMC certificate. To apply, candidates must have a 12-month employment contract at an accredited WACS site, and these accredited sites are Bunbury, Geraldton and Kalgoorlie. So any doctors who are interested in this program should preference these 3 sites in their centralised recruitment application. Once successful in gaining a 12-month WACS contract at one of those sites, doctors are then invited to apply to the WBA program. Just like to change the slide, thank you. For any aspiring rural generalists, WACS has established a coordination unit for rural generalist training across WA. Our coordination unit streamlines your training by linking you with rural generalist mentors to assist you with a career pathway. They will review and assist you with your training for college entry, provide assistance with accessing requisite courses and connect you with a wide network of stakeholders. Applications for the pathway open on Monday, the 16th of August. And if anyone has any questions about the application process or eligibility, please contact our team via the email address you can see on the slides. And we also have a mailing list you can join as well. And then on, I think, the final slide, so for WACS junior doctors who are interested in a career as a rural general surgeon, there is the 2-year ASPIRE program, which is the Applied Surgical Pathway in Rural Environments. And candidates who complete this program will then be very well placed to apply for general surgery training with RACS. And for WACS junior doctors who wish to pursue a career as a rural physician, our 1-year RAPTA program, which is the Rural Adult Physician Training Opportunities and Rotations, is a 1-year program that will provide candidates with the rotations, experience and professional development opportunities to be well placed to apply to BPT. And I think there's one more. Yeah, thank you. So if you'd like any more information about the application process for RMO or SMR positions, or even any of the WACS rotations or pathways, please feel free to get in touch with us via the details that you can see now. We've also got a QR code that will take you to our full selection of flyers that you can download. And we're happy to take any questions at the very end of these presentations as well. So all the best with your applications, and thanks Andy and Sarah for having us.
Sorry, can you hear us okay? Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much, Victoria, for that information and for chatting us through the awesome rural pathways that are available through WACS. So we'll just touch on a couple of other programs that are available as well, sort of outside of the centralised process. So as Victoria mentioned, applications for the rural CRP are now open. And another program, community residency program that's available to the RMOs is the Metro Community Residency Program, which is on offer through Silver Chain. Applications for the Metro CRP will be opening around July. So the Silver Chain term provides RMOs with a really rich and diverse experience of medical care in the community and has a really patient-centred approach. These placements provide an opportunity for RMOs to practice independently while being supported by the Silver Chain doctors. It has 2 streams available, so palliative care stream and hospital in the home. And it is one of the only opportunities available to the RMOs to experience community care in a metropolitan setting prior to making a vocational decision. To be eligible for a Metro CRP term, similarly to the rural CRP, you must be an RMO at one of the participating hospitals, so Royal Perth, Sir Charles Gardner or Fiona Stanley. And more information about both the Metro and rural CRP terms is available on the PMC website, and the link is just on the screen. Another pathway that is available is the GP pathway pilot that comes under the GP project. So the intent of the GP pathway project is to raise the profile of GP training, optimise GP training in WA hospitals, and provide GP suitable rotations that support preparation for community GP training. GP suitable rotations are provided by each participating health service. Rotations vary by health service and will be available on the GP pilot matrix for 2022. And we expect that the matrix will be finalised next week and made available on the GP pilot information webpage. To be eligible for the GP pilot pathway in 2022, new applicants must have an RMO employment contract at a participating health service for 2022. These health services include WACS, Fiona Stanley, so South Metro Health Service, North Metro Health Service, so Sir Charles Gardner Osborne Park Hospital Group and King Edward Memorial Hospital, East Metro Health Service, so Royal Perth Bentley Group, the Child and Adolescent Health Service, St John of God Midland and Joondalup Health Campus. And also to be eligible, new applicants must plan to apply for the Australian General Practice Training, AGPT, before the end of 2022. So this is the AGP intake for 2022. GP pathway pilot expressions of interest will open later in 2021 in July and August, and the EOI will be through email. On to BPT. So the BPT adult is a separate application process. So applications for entry or continuation in adult BPT are not part of the centralised application process that we're discussing today. Those applications occur separately. Candidates for adult BPT must first secure employment with Fiona Stanley, Royal Perth, or Sir Charles Gardner to be eligible for BPT. Applications for adult BPT will be advertised and applied online through MedJobs WA later in the year. So keep an eye on MedJobs WA if you're interested in adult BPT. In terms of Pediatrics basic physician training, to be eligible for this process, candidates seeking to register as a first-year basic paediatric trainee are first required to secure employment for 12 months with Perth Children's Hospital as an RMO or a registrar, or secure employment for 12 months with Fiona Stanley Hospital as a paediatric or neonatal registrar. Prospective trainees who have accepted eligible employment will be informed of the BPT paediatric selection process by the postgraduate medical education team at PCH. And finally, the SSR recruitment process. So the centralised SSR service surgical registrar recruitment is now open. This is again a separate application process to the centralised RMO and SMR that we've been discussing today. Four employing health services are participating in the process: Royal Perth, Sir Charles Gardner, Fiona Stanley and Joondalup Health Campus. And just like the RMO and SMR process, you can submit one application which will cover 3 site preferences. Be sure to read the application guide really carefully for the SSR process for information about the specialties that are available at each site, because they do vary between the sites. And if you're a current RMO on a 2 or 3 year contract who's interested in stepping up to the service surgical registrar role, we'd recommend that you apply to both the centralised RMO SMR application process and the SSR process. This is just to ensure that you do remain contracted to your site or to another site if you opt to change, should you not be successful in getting an SSR position.
One key aspect of that is we've streamlined the selection criteria for both SMR, RMO, as well as SSR. So for both a recruitment process, there is a foundation set of criteria, which is applicable to both centralised recruitment process. So you need, and then there'll be specific selection criteria for SMR as well as SSR. So we're hoping that would actually save you some time, and you really need to just prepare one set of foundation criteria for both processes, and then go on to prepare for more SMR or SSR specific criteria.
And just a couple of key contacts to finish up. So if you've got any questions about the centralised application process, please email us at medicalrecruitment at health.wa.gov.au so we can be reached here. Remember that the application guide is your friend and has a lot of information, and also has a frequently asked questions section. So have a look and see if that covers any of your queries, and then if not, then feel free to flick us an email and we can try and help you out. If you've got any technical issues with the MedJobs WA portal, please contact the MedJobs WA support team, and their email address is just there, so medjobswa@health.wa.gov.au. And if you've got any questions about a health service or a hospital site specifically, or any employment queries, please contact the medical workforce teams at the participating health sites. Their emails can be found on the front page of the MedJobs WA advertisement. They're all listed on there. So finally, we've probably got a little bit of time for a couple of questions. We have had quite a few come through, so we'll do our best to get through as many as we can, and then any that we can't get through, we will circulate responses to via email to all of the attendees today, so that we've all, so that you can all be across the query. And before we get started on the questions, I think just like to say a huge thank you to Victoria and Dean as well for coming along and sharing your insights. We really appreciate that. So I'll just have a look through. We have got quite a few here. So one question came through about the is there an interview process for the RMO applications? That's site dependent. So some sites will be conducting interviews, and it really sort of is happening at a site basis. So there may be interviews conducted, but they'll be organised through the medical workforce teams at the site. So they'd be contacting you directly to organise any interviews. So you wouldn't be getting any MedJobs correspondence about that. That will be directly from the hospital medical workforce teams. Another query that we had was about the who to direct a cover letter to. So the query was, do we direct our cover letter to our first preference or just a generic one? And I know that Marg Sturdy, who has dialed in, had a response to that. She had said that it's important to address your cover letter to a person, so either the medical workforce manager or the director of medical services, because it stands out and it lets your employer know that you've done a bit of research on the facility. So if you can find out that information, and that's really valuable to include for your cover letter, so for your first preference hospital.
We've got a query coming through that is from an RMO who's at Charlie's at the moment, and who's on a 3-year contract since with Charlie's. The query is about wanting to apply for RMO position at Geraldton Regional Hospital with WACS, and list Charlie as a second preference. So and therefore they will make you an option 2 applicants. And therefore, if your WACS RMO application as your first preference wasn't successful, then yes, you will keep your Charlie RMO position from 2022.
Another question just about the recording of today was, would the slides and video recording be available for anyone who missed out? And yes, we will be publishing the recording. That will be going on the PMCWA website, and we'll also circulate a link for that in the email with the missed or the additional queries and responses. So we'll send that through as well.
I have a quick one. A query about whether you need to mention the reason you want to preference the 3 hospitals in your cover letter. No, you don't need to do that, but probably it's important to address in your cover letter why you want to work at your first preference hospital. I think that's probably important.
Another query is from an IMG perspective. So if we have applied as IMGs for the mid-year round, do we use the same profile to apply again for 2022? Yes, please use the same MedJobs profile, so use your same login. The applications are separate, so there's no information shared between them. So you will need to upload new selection criteria, CV, referee details. However, some of the information on your profile is stored across the board on MedJobs WA, so things like your name, email address, home address, date of birth, those details will carry through into your new application, but any other information you will need to re-enter again. So yes, please do a new application if you have not been successful in the mid-year round, but you use the same login and same profile.
A very quick question. The application guide can be found as part of the advert on MedJobs.co for 2022 RMO SMR Centralised Application Process. Once you go onto the advert, it will be right at the bottom with the JDF as well as the selection criteria and the WACS site, SMR site and position preference document. Sure, so we're just trying to get through as many as we can.
I've got one here, and I might call on someone else to help, maybe Marg or Andy or Dean or Victoria. If I will be a PGY3 in 2022, can I apply for an SMR position, or do I have to do another RMO year? So this query is coming from someone whose training background is in New South Wales, where PGY3 usually progress to an SRMO. So can anybody help shed some light on that? Is a PGY3 next year, would they be able to apply for an SMR position?
I would think so. Yeah, I would think so. Yes.
Yeah. So definitely, but we would advise you as a PGY3 to make sure that you have at least one preference, which is an RMO position. So you can preference 3. You can preference your medical registrar job, service medical registrar job number 1 in one facility, number 2 in another facility, but please leave an RMO preference as a backstop.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. I've got a quick one. If I don't get accepted to any of my three preference hospital sites, will I get allocated to the other hospitals? Unfortunately, so if you don't get an offer from your first preference hospital, you go into the second round, and where you can get an offer from your second preference hospital. And if you didn't get any offer during that period, you go into the general offer period, where you may be offered a position from any of the employing services. And unfortunately, if you didn't get any offer during that period, that means you're unsuccessful during this application process.
We've had a couple of queries from people who will be PGY3s and whose contracts will be finishing next year, but they are wanting to stay at their site. I believe if your contract is expiring, then you would need to submit a new application as a new application because your contract will be ending. So might be worth double checking with your medical workforce team at the site, but yeah, I would say that you would need to be submitting a new application because the contract is coming to an end.
We've got a quick question about under the section WA government employment details in the application portal, what is classification level and what is award? Very good question. We'll have to get back to you on that one because I don't have med jobs open in front of me, and but we'll make sure we get back to you on that one. Probably have time for a couple more questions.
Just another question here about the mid-year crossover of information between the two. Can references provided for the mid-year intake be utilised for this round, or do they have to be submitted again? No, they will need to be submitted again because they are separate application processes. Another query as well, how many vacancies or openings for RMO positions are offered in each of the hospitals? Is there a way to check it? It's very varied between the different sites, and it depends on a lot of different factors. So depending on their current staff numbers and depending on attrition and possibly applicant attrition throughout the process. So we can't really provide any more information than that, unfortunately.
Sorry, it's Mark Study here. Sorry, there will be some positions that are really, really highly sought after. So one of the reasons that we've asked WACS to give a presentation tonight, and we haven't asked the other participants in this process, is that the opportunities in WACS are amazing. You will get really, really excellent and unique clinical exposure in your WACS hospital in environments that are extremely well supported. So if you are wanting to go to one of the specialty facilities, you really do need to make your application stand out. As Dean said, let them know that you're passionate about it, and let them know that you will be the absolute best candidate for them. It is competitive. It's a competitive process. We're aware of that. So you need to be putting your absolutely best shot of your application.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. I've just got another question here about options for job sharing and part-time work as an SMR. Do we just mention this preference in our cover letter, or is there a specific way to apply for this? There is a drop-down section on med jobs that asks your preference for full-time or part-time work, I believe, but I think it would be really important to include in your cover letter as well. So if you've got a particular person who you might be job sharing with, or if you have a request for part-time work, I would say certainly include it in your cover letter. And I think there is a section for part-time on mid-jobs as well to preference that.
Yeah, and I think it's covered under either employment details 1. Sorry, no, actually, I think it's covered under preferences. After you've outlined your preferences, there's another section below it where you can outline whether you're requesting part-time. And as part of that, in that section, you can request split contract as well. Maybe one more. Sorry, but we'll try and get through all of those. We'll save those chats, and then we'll try and outline the questions and then provide answers and send it back to all the registrants.
I've just got a query for WACS. Will Narrogin be an option for WACS RMO rotations next year, or is it just through the CRP program that Narrogin is rotated to?
Like me to take it, Victoria? Nicole Barbridge here. Narrogin will only be a community residency program rotation next year.
Great, thanks Nicole.
But if anybody out there has a specific interest and they want to contact us to talk about it, please do, because at WACS we know that people are passionate about why they want to work rurally and why they want to choose a particular location. So we do like to talk to people about their individual interests and see what we can do to customise it.
Nicole, just while I've got you there, would you just be able to clarify? Apparently we've got some conflicting information. Is Broome available as a rotation from Joondalup next year? I'm not sure whether you can answer that or not off the top.
For RMOs,
Yeah.
yes, it is.
It is. Okay, thank you. Great, thank you, Nicole. Someone asked, can you apply for a position to start mid-year? That will be part of the next year's mid-year recruitment, which will start around about April. This application process is for the 2022 clinical year starting in January. I'm probably going to have to call it there. Thank you everyone for attending. I know that you're all busy, and we hope we have provided you with some insight into how to apply for this process. And we're here to help. So if you've got any queries, please email through to the medical recruitment email address, and we'll try and address your query as much as possible. As well as if you've got any WACS specific questions, please address it to the WACS detail. The video from today, as well as the slides, will be on PMCWA website, as well as all the questions and hopefully our answers. We'll have to work out whether we can save it on there or we will send them out to all the registrants. I'm not sure if that's the right word, registrant, but I'm going to go with it. So thank you very much for your time today, and best of luck for your applications. Please start your application early.
Hi Andy, it's Margaret Sturdy here. So again, I'd like to express my thanks to everybody for logging into this webinar this afternoon. Thank you, Andy and Sarah, for all the work that you've done in preparation for this. These things don't happen themselves, so we're aware of an enormous amount of work. Victoria, thanks for the rundown on WACS, and also Dean, wherever you've just disappeared off my screen. Your tips for putting in a competitive application have been really, really helpful. Please be mindful that we'll be probably getting 1,500 or 2,000 applications through this process. So it is important, as Dean said, don't just sort of tell us the the reasons that we've asked about the essential selection criteria, because we've asked those questions because we know they're important. But let us know how you address those. If you have any problems, we are here to help. So if you know you've created a profile in MedJobs before and you can't remember what your username or password are, or the email that you used to register is no longer working, please get in touch with us and we'll be able to interrogate the system and get you back on track. Creating a parallel profile just creates a lot of problems. Get your stuff organised early. Don't leave this until the last minute because it puts you under considerable stress, and you don't need that. So get things prepared early. If there are any problems submitting, we would like to know about it, not 5 minutes before the submission's due and the process is closing. So crack onto that pretty early. You will get some notifications from MedJobs. So, you'll get notifications that you've gone into the suitable pool. That's not a job offer. The next notification is that you've gone into the pool for a job offer. That's not your contract. So just be mindful that there's a lot of communication that's automatically generated by the system. You will have your contract when the medical workforce team at your employing hospital sends it to you, and that could be weeks after you've got your notification that you're in the successful pool, or that you've been successful in being offered a position at your hospital of choice. Don't despair through this process. There will be several rounds of job offers. I really urge you only to preference those hospitals that you want to work at. This process is really designed at matching you up with the place that you want to work and the job that you want to do. So again, I know it's getting late. You don't want to listen to me droning on. Thank you everybody for your participation today. Thank you for your questions. They've been great. We'll trawl through them and get back to people about it. And for all of you who've spoken tonight, this evening, thank you so much. Andy and Sarah, again, well done. Great. Sorry, I'm looking up at because I've got you on that screen and I know my camera's down here. But thanks for all the hard work that you've done to pull this together. Fantastic.
Thanks everyone. Thanks Mark.
Thanks Mark, and thanks everyone for coming along.
Best of luck.